Yo everyone, last Hoenn video did really well, so today we'll be revisiting it for one short look at one of its most underrated trainers, Wally. This guy is practically an unofficial dex holder who honestly got shafted by the story, so today we're going to give him justice and talk about him. Specifically, the time he pretty much saved the entire world by fighting the legendary sky Pokemon Rayquaza. But of course he's not alone, as you've seen by the thumbnail. So enough gassing him up, let's get right into things. So, we start the story off with an introduction of Wally, which I'll only briefly talk about since I spoke about him in the Ruby vs Norman video. To summarize, Wally is a kid from Petalburg City who was born to take L's. Right out of the gates, he was nerfed with a birth condition, similar to asthma, but to the extent that he couldn't even go outside and play with Pokemon. However, he still wants to become a Pokemon trainer, so he asked the city's gym leader and Ruby's dad, Norman, to teach him how to catch Pokemon. But he says no, since Wally's apparently too ill to become a trainer. Ruby then steps in his father's place and helps Wally catch a Pokemon, but due to some unfortunate events, the two get split up, with Wally ending up getting Ruby's roles. Now we take a small time skip to the literal end of the world. Kyogre and Groudon are fighting each other at full force, with everyone doing their best to find a solution. Whilst Ruby and Sapphire are enjoying the main character spotlight, our boy Wally is in Pacifilog Town, helping out an old man. And looking at him, you can see this guy's got a change of personality, dropping the bland white shirt he had and finally getting some drip. But with Wally, it's all about efficiency, you see, as this suit doesn't only help him look nice, instead also giving him the ability to breathe easier. And although he had no one to teach him, Wally managed to get his own group of Pokemon, a Cacturne and Roselia. Green Pokemon, so they're all matching in colours. On one hand, the world may be ending, but on the other, Wally's living his dream. Wally and the old man prepare to head to the shelter, and we see they're being eerily watched by a shadowy figure. And with a physique like this, I think we can all guess who it is. Wally then notices in the raging sea a bag with a Pokeball, hosting a Treecko in it. With some quick thinking, he gets his Cacturne to launch its needles at the bag, pinning it to the rock and stopping it from getting washed away. He then collects the bag and heals up the Treecko. Out of nowhere, a voice then starts to compliment Wally on his use of his Pokemon, and asks why he used such a dangerous move like Needle Arm. If he missed the attack, he could have easily hit the Pokemon and injured it more. So what was his reason? Was it cruelness, confidence, or cleverness? Wally then tells him the reason why he did this was because he trusts his Pokemon. Even if he can't do much himself, he knows his Pokemon can do anything. Like, come on man, listen to this guy talk. He's already main character built. And it seems the man would agree as he smiles and steps out of the shadow, revealing himself to be Norman. And geez, with the way he was shouting one minute and then smiling the next, as well as Wally just being overall nervous, I just can't help but think of that one scene from Team 4-Star.
So, can I help you?
No, but maybe I can help you.
I need an adult.
I am an adult.
Norman then reveals he's here to finally train Wally, like he was meant to do before. Honestly, common Norman L, refusing to train Wally when he was at his worst, and now trying to train him when he was at his best. Well, not his best, but you know what I mean. So Wally accepts the offer and Norman and him prepare for their training, with Norman revealing their training location is the Sky Pillar, a massive tower that extends above the clouds and soars into the heavens. And with the way the story is going to be ending, a heavenly tower seems pretty on point. Wally's just taking in this amazing training ground when Norman tells him to hurry up as their training session has already begun. This guy honestly gets on my nerves, especially once you find out the reason why he's doing all this stuff. Norman then gives Wally special wrist attachments to hold his Pokeballs and instructs him to climb the tower. Then, like with Piccolo and Gohan, he's like, I'ma head out. So Wally's left to climb the Sky Pillar without even knowing how tall it is. And right after he's taken his first step, he nearly plummets below due to the weak flooring. Luckily though, he's saved by the Treecko from earlier. Wally's confused of what he's meant to do, because no matter where he steps, the floor just wants to cave in. But Treecko spots a bike, just randomly laying there. I know you guys probably understand what's going on, but I'm gonna explain it anyway. Norman left Wally the bike in order for him to cycle across the floors before they break, just like what happens in the games. But he also gave him wrist attachments so he can call out his Pokemon whilst he's riding the bike. Wally starts to deep how intense training with someone like Norman is, but he's no slouch either. Norman may be built different, but he's also built different. The only difference is, Wally's built different in all the wrong ways, as if he moves too much, he'll start taking damage to his health. Although he may be nerfed, he'll show he has what it takes, so Wally heads up the tower at full speed. Outside, during all this, the old man and Norman talk about how Wally has to aim above this current task, as after this, they still have something bigger ahead. Back inside the tower, Wally's made it to floor 15, and he keeps getting jumped left and right by wild Pokemon. He uses his suit to help out with his breathing and then gets right back to the job, taking down floor 20, then 30, and even 40, then finally reaching floor 49. But on this floor lies the dungeon boss, being a Dusclops. The Dusclops starts doing something and Wally takes out the Pokedex that he found with Treecko. realizing that Dusclops is making a literal black hole to absorb everything. Trico starts acting up inside of his Pokeball, signaling to Wally that he needs to use his Pokedex. Wally reads through and after a bit understands what he needs to do. So Wally locks in and joins sides with Trico, heading straight for the black hole, with Trico evolving mid-attack and using Leaf Blade to slash right through the black hole. And damn, I'ma reference Zoro here because he's a fellow must-head just like Wally, because geez, that slash was cold. But it just doesn't hit the same as a Dragon Ball reference, you know what I'm saying? Let's just say he's like Trunks, because that's just much cooler. So with Dusclops defeated, Wally's finally made it to the 50th floor, otherwise known as the top. Norman then appears, telling Wally that he can take off his mask as up here the air is much clearer. And now that he's undergone this training, his lungs have become much stronger. But not just his lungs, he himself has become a stronger trainer. As a gift for completing his training, Norman gives Wally a Flygon, due to him not having a flying Pokemon with him. And honestly, that's a W gift, I have no complaints. Wally tries to thank Norman, but he just swishes his hand at him, telling him they need to go to their next part of their training. In his head, Norman states that he's counting on Wally as their true goal is even higher than simply the 50th floor. Instead, it's at the very peak of the Sky Pillar. Time skip a bit ahead and Ruby and Sapphire have finished their own training on Mirage Island, leaving only Wally to finish off his job. As he battles Norman atop the tower, he comes up with strategies to try take him down, like exploiting Slacking's ability, True One, which makes it lazy after a turn. However, Norman's still a step ahead, using Skill Swap with his Spinda and defeating Wally. Norman tells Wally it's no surprise he can't win, after all he's not holding back against him. However, he's still putting up a good fight. Wally then asks a good question, why exactly is he training him? And Norman decides he might as well just tell him. But suddenly, the pillar starts to shake and Norman gets a phone call from Scott, filling him in on the information down below, such as Ruby and Sapphire getting the red and blue orbs, as well as mentioning the third ancient Pokemon. Wally asks if what he heard was correct, and Norman confirms the true reason why he's training Wally is for the awakening of the third legendary Pokemon. In other words, Wally's just getting used. So, now it's time for things to get serious. Norman gets Wally to stand inside a circle whilst he pulls open the entrance. A light then appears, sucking Wally into it. Norman tells Wally he needs to follow the path in front of him as it will lead him to where the Pokemon is. But Wally wonders he might not be able to do it alone. Norman reassures him he's trained well and he's got the strength for this. And if they fail here, not only will the Hoenn region be in danger, but instead the whole world. It's pretty nice of Norman to give Wally a pep talk like this, but it'd be better if he did this with his own son. Just saying. Norman then opens up to Wally, revealing he's been searching for this Pokemon for 5 years, even sacrificing spending time with his family in order to find it. And now that he knows where it is, he needs Wally's help to catch it. So let me quickly explain something about this Sky Pillar, as it's a bit different from the games. This Sky Pillar is like a small maze that Wally has to crawl through, with there even being dead ends. From outside, Norman can pull some chains and open the dead ends. Norman explains this puzzle is something that can only be done by an adult strong enough to pull the chains and a child small enough to crawl through. Oh, and if you're wondering why Pokemon can't do it, well, that's because there's a repel like light. But after hearing what Norman said, Wally thinks to himself,
Say, hold up, wait a minute, something ain't right.
Wind starts to swirl around Wally as he's finally made it to the very peak of the tower, where he sees the silhouette of Rayquaza. Wally asks Norman how to awaken it, and Norman tells him that the Pokemon's being surrounded by ozone, which surrounds the Pokemon whenever it hibernates. So to awaken the legendary Pokemon, all Wally has to do is create a hole inside the ozone. Simple, is what I want to say, but nothing's that simple, as ozone is poisonous, and if Wally inhales too much, it'll be game over for him. And not only that, tiny debris of rocks are flying around everywhere. So Wally masks up and gets to work. Wally does his best to avoid the debris getting picked up by the wind, but all he can think about is what Norman said. The combination of a child and adult, realizing that Norman was meant to be here with Ruby rather than him. In other words, Wally's just a bench warmer for Ruby. Like when the ace goes down and the substitute has to come in. That's pretty much what's happening here. If Ruby was around, Wally would not be receiving this training. Wally uses Curlier to start wearing down the wall, and whilst he does, he says he doesn't care about being a substitute for Ruby. Before this, he couldn't even go outside, let alone own any Pokemon. But now he can finally be useful, and stop the battle that's tearing apart the Hoenn region, going full Super Saiyan 2 mode and getting Grovar to blast bullet seeds into the ozone layer, successfully creating a hole. And this, my viewers, is how you clutch up. Wally's been on the bench for all quarters of the game, sitting back whilst Ruby and Sapphire did all the work. But now it's his time to sub in, and he didn't play any games. Wally, you may only be a side character, but you're the main character of side characters. Rayquaza awakens and is like, I have no idea what's going on, but Groudon Kyogre, it's on sight. Then he zooms off, destroying the peak of a tower, like it wasn't just resting there. Wally is luckily saved by his Flygon, but after that he can barely stay conscious. He tells Norman that he did it, but the man is nowhere to be seen, dipping as soon as Rayquaza is awakened. And side note, I have no idea how bro got there, but he looks cold as hell riding on Rayquaza's head like that. Anyway, now that Rayquaza's been awakened, Wally's job is done and he gets sidelined for the rest of his series, never to be used meaningfully again. Thus, dear viewers, is the sad fate of rival side characters. I hope everyone enjoyed this video. It was super cool for Wally to get this moment, and I really wish they just made him the third Dex holder instead of Emerald. But it is what it is, I guess. Before I go, I just want to leave you all with one message. If it weren't for Wally, the Hoenn region would have never been saved. As always, let me know what battle you want to see next, and I'll see you all in the next one. Take care.